Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Cluster API Provider Azure Office Hours. Cluster API and Provider Azure are a subproject of CNCF SIG Cluster Lifecycle. We adhere to the code of conduct, so please raise hands if you'd like to speak. We welcome all speakers, and please be kind to each other. Okay, so let me see if I can pull up this week's agenda doc. Okay, all right, let's see if I can share the right window. That's it. All right. So now is the time of the meeting when we invite anyone who's new or wants to introduce themselves for any reason to raise hands, and I'll call and you can say hi. Maybe share why you're interested in this. So if anyone's new, here's your chance. Nathan, hi.
Hi, yeah, I'm from Adobe. I kind of work a little bit with Mike and Brian, but we're in a different working group, so I haven't worked too closely together. But we've been playing around with Cluster API and CAPZ in particular to try and get some Azure clusters created, and so we've been interested in that and trying to participate in the project and see it move forward. So.
Cool, great to see you. Great to see you yesterday in the Cluster API office hours as well. Welcome, Nathan. Okay, I think 3, 2, 1, moving on. So let's go through our sort of formal agenda here. So please add your name to the attendee list if you'd like. You can see folks doing that. I did that for a second in real time. And this says at the end milestone review. So that sounds fair given the agenda seems fairly light. So we'll do the milestone review at the end and get straight to our discussion topic. So John Hune, you look to be first on the list with Azure Resource Health toggling for AKS. You're up.
All right. So for a little bit of background, Azure does provide kind of a generic resource health service that AKS hooks into, and that will report things on your cluster like core DNS is down, a node is down, that sort of thing. And we want to bring that sort of information back into CAPZ and expose that on like the Azure Managed Control Plane resource. So that's what this PR is open to try to accomplish. One kind of quirk that we've found with the Azure service is that whenever you create an AKS cluster, there's this fairly benign error that shows up as soon as you create the cluster when it's otherwise ready to go. And that sticks around for 15 to 20 minutes before the error goes away, and then CAPZ picks that change up and actually switches the control plane resource to be ready, like fulfilling its ready condition. So we're thinking about adding a way to toggle this behavior on and off so that for people that don't need that same status exposed, they can still get their clusters up and running just as fast as they would today. But for users that do need this information, they can still toggle that information with the understanding that it will take longer for clusters to at least look like they're ready. So there's been some discussion in this issue. The two approaches that have been proposed so far are adding a new API field in like the Azure Managed Control Plane resource to toggle the service health, or adding a new feature flag, kind of like the machine pool feature flag or the AKS feature flag, to toggle this specific behavior on and off. So I know, Mike, I know you've chimed into that discussion. Jack and Cecile have been in that discussion. Does anybody have any more context they'd like to share on opinions on that or any other thoughts regarding that?
I'll just ask a naive question, even though I participated in this before. Is there, so I haven't heard it framed exactly how you said it right now. Is there a way to identify that initial problem condition that you outlined that takes 15 to 20 minutes to clear and tolerate that as like expected when this feature is enabled and move the control plane to ready ahead of time?
Yeah, I think we could do that. It might be a little bit of kind of raw, like check if this string contains this substring sort of thing that probably isn't necessarily API according to Azure. But yeah, I think that is one possible way we could work around that. Mike, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just I came across it. I posted it in chat, this proposal in CAPI earlier today about different status conditions. Are you talking about reporting it up into one that bubbles up into, you know, for following this kind of pattern? Or is this meant for something else?
This would be in the like a status condition on the Azure Managed Control Plane resource. That's what you're getting at. I think that's
Yeah, just as we're
yeah.
Because as we're talking about in this issue here about starting to take some of those statuses and emitting events for them, I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of that as we start to report some of these things.
Cool. Go ahead, Matt.
I didn't see it in the PR here, but is AKS aware of this status unknown thing that happens initially?
Yeah, we
Consider
did
a bug.
ask them about that. And from I did add a comment. There is one kind of buried in that PR somewhere, but
Okay.
AKS did say that like 20 minutes does seem like too long and worth looking into. But it didn't seem like they could get it much further below like 10 minutes. So it seems like it's always going to be some number of minutes, even if they do without like kind of re-architecting how all that stuff kind of flows.
Okay. So it's something we'll have to work around rather than wait for them to fix, probably.
That's kind of the sense I'm getting, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, I can't find my raise hand while I'm sharing, so I'm just going to talk. And to be clear, this doesn't actually materially affect when the cluster is actually usable. The clusters are still usable and functional within the from our testing within like the 5 to 10 minute range or whatever or 3 to 5, whatever the SLA is for cluster readiness.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that I would maybe poll this audience. Are any folks building sort of serial flows based on cluster API state, or are you more likely to build it based on the Kubernetes cluster state? So like, are you polling for the API server is up and I can use the cluster, or are you polling for the cluster API management server says the cluster is ready? Go ahead, Dane.
Yeah, I can tell you our bootstrap flow is definitely serial and definitely waits for the health reported by cluster API before it continues. And currently that would be longer than our timeouts. We aren't currently using AKS though, but if we were, then we would be impacted.
I think that's useful information. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, our flow will be currently it's polling for the cluster API to report it as ready, and then we'll be registering it into tools like Argo CD at that point. And then when this events emitting is in place, it'll be watching for the events, and when the event reports is ready, we'll do the register at that point, assuming that, you know, that's because we're assuming at that point that the cluster's API endpoints are up and ready to go.
Cool. Well, it's a small sample size, but 2 for 2, we should probably assume that there are a significant number of folks who, in fact, consume those cluster API state transitions. And so this would essentially delay those pipelines for 20 minutes. Cecile, I saw you raise your hand real quick, but then you lowered it. So maybe you.
Yeah, sorry, I changed my mind. All good.
Cool. So I think I will try and see if there's a good way where we can ignore that specific error and probably within some sort of time window within when the cluster was created, so that if that, because it is an error about something to do with can't reach the metrics cluster on the AKS instance. So I'll see if we can ignore that, like just after the cluster was created, but still, if that does happen to show up like a day later, then still surface that. So yeah, I will definitely play around with that. And if that works, then maybe we don't need to toggle at all. But I will follow up. Cool. I think that was all I wanted to talk about.
Cool. That sounds super interesting. Maybe some combination of cluster, the status is provisioning. The creation time is, say, less than an hour old. But yeah, if this is a terminal thing, we don't want to overlook it because, so I don't know if that's doable. So thanks for looking into that. All right, going once, going twice, going three times, more comments. Okay, Mike, you are up with the next agenda item, Azure SDK API path updates.
Yeah, so when working on the cluster autoscaler stuff, I noticed that a lot of our API paths are using like 2021, 05, 01, or even in some cases 2020 something. And I just wasn't sure what the process was, or if there even was a process or a method behind it for updating those paths. With the cluster autoscaler one, I need, with that PR that I linked there, I needed to update it in order to get access to the full set of fields that were possible. So at least for that one, for the Azure Managed Control Plane, I had to update the version, or not the SDK version itself, but the path that it was using. And I just wanted to find out kind of the the method or process for that sort of thing, so that as I went about this, that I was doing it in the right way.
That makes sense. Cecile?
Thanks. Yeah, I have many things to say on that topic, so thanks for bringing it up. First thing is we don't have a process. Currently, it's been, historically, it's been kind of ad hoc. Someone needs a new version, and or someone just notices we're a bit behind and just opens a PR with a version bump. We merge it pretty quickly. That's usually what's happened so far. In terms of right now, there is a PR open in the queue. I don't know if you can find it, Jack. That has a bump to the SDK version, because as you've noticed, we're quite behind. Yeah, there we go, that one. That PR is kind of stale. I actually did ping the author this morning, seeing if they were still interested in moving it forward, or if someone else could take it from them, just so we don't block progress. So that's kind of an immediate solution. The other thing I wanted to point out for the SDK is we have another PR open in the queue right now, which enables Dependabot on CabZ, which would allow us to use the bot, which if you've not used before, you're not familiar with it, it basically just like looks for dependency updates in GoMod and will like regularly open PRs to bump versions for you. So that's another thing we can do to improve this. And then the other thing that's like a kind of bigger, longer term effort is there is a migration. So there's a version, right now there's like a V1 and a V2 of the Azure Go SDK. So we're still on the V1 or track 1, I think is what they call it. There is a bigger epic issue open to migrating to track 2. That work is a multi-weeks effort, or multi-month even. It has a lot of breaking changes. It requires some re-architecturing. So much bigger change, but very necessary if we want to keep moving forward, because they've stopped releasing versions of track 1, which means we're stuck in time at this point. So if we want to get the new stuff, we need to get to track 2. That being said, sorry, I'm taking a while, but we actually had a conversation and I wanted to bring this up. So thank you for bringing up this topic, but with Jack, and maybe Jack wants to talk about that, but we've talked about before having a dependency on Azure Service Operator for provisioning stuff instead of calling directly to the SDK. And that actually, Jack, do you want to just give the pitch on that? I don't want to take that from you.
Well, yeah, I don't fully actually understand it, but my understanding is that what Azure Service Operator provides is a set of sort of definitive CRDs per Azure service that continually reconciles. So you basically have sort of a local API in your Kubernetes cluster. So the idea would be that we would, when we scaffold CapZ management cluster, we would, I assume it would be on the management cluster, we would bootstrap all the necessary CRDs that we would need, like Azure networking or AKS or storage, et cetera, et cetera. And then we would refactor CapZ code to, instead of wiring up SDK Go code in the CapZ controller itself to call to the Azure APIs, we would simply formulate new CRD resources that conform to the ASO CRDs to do the work for us. So there's a lot of work to do it, but you can sort of imagine that the North Star means two really important things. One is that there's less code in CapZ that we have to worry about and maintain for this. But then two, we get sort of updates to the APIs for free by relying on a sort of well-formed, strong API front end, and then the details. We don't have to worry about the details under the hood, which we do now. So every time we rev the SDK API, you know, we might have function call changes, and so we need to do all that. So ASO will do all that for us and then expose a durable API that we use to formulate CRD resources. I wanted to mention just one thing, and then I'll call on folks. Did that make sense to anybody? My attempt at describing ASO? Cecile, do you know more than I do and want to refine my explanation?
The only quick thing I'll add is in this context, the reason we're bringing this up now, like this is very early stage idea, but the reason it's relevant is because ASO is already on track to SDK. So this could be an alternative to doing that work. Kind of like instead of going to track 2, we just directly cut over to ASO and then we don't even have to do the migration. That's the idea.
Yep. So I'll add one thing for you, Mike, and then I think we should keep talking about this. It looks like the necessary changes you need for the autoscaler features are just the path change, which is actually fairly easy. So as long as this compile, you know, there's no build errors after you make this change. And I would definitely advise that you make this change everywhere. Sorry, yeah, this one. So that everywhere we're calling the container service API, we now call 2022-301. So because this path that you need is available in the current SDK version that we have, you can just change that. That's a lighter touch change. And the test should give you pretty reliable feedback if that's a safe change or not.
Yeah, that's what I did everywhere except for what in one place. And I left a comment about what to do with an outstanding question in that place, but we don't need to go over that comment at this point.
Okay, cool. So I think David was next, probably wanting to talk about Azure Service Operator more. So go ahead, David T.
Yeah, I just wanted to which is just a minor add, that I think that if it were to go that route over just, let's say, migrating to track 2 on Go SDK, it would, or it should make things also much easier to light up all the other features because they're auto-generating basically everything that's under the API for the different resource providers. You've already got the CRD code, you've already got it testing and updating and all those things there. So that should hopefully make things a lot easier. That's all I wanted to say.
Cool, thanks. Brian?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting thing with ASO. And so we're currently using ASO v1 within our clusters to provision backing resources, Cosmos DB, databases and such. We've yet to move over to the v2 version of ASO. And part of this is because we're waiting on the team to provide the flexible server integration or capability. So I guess the only sort of word of caution or just kind of an aspect of tying ourselves to an external dependency such as that is with all of these resources that they're trying to integrate with, what is their capacity and ability to manage timelines for any sort of updates and changes that we need, while they're also facilitating just regular resource provisioning, for anyone else that's using ASO. So that's all.
Great call out, Mike.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines. I think we'd have to definitely coordinate with them on the release side of it. If they're, let's say, on a 2-month release cycle, we get in there, takes 2 months to get a update to that operator, and then we come back to our release cycle, takes 2 months to get into our release cycle. We may be really slowing ourselves down for adding functionality. Not saying it would happen that severely, but just something to be to consider as we do an evaluation of that switch. That's one of the reasons why, at least from my perspective, we're not going with something like Crossplane, just because of that release dependency chain timing wise. We'd rather stick straight with the source instead of that abstraction on abstraction side.
Good call. I mean, in practice, over time, we're usually like 18 months behind, but it is certainly something to be aware of. Go ahead, Dane.
Just real quickly, and I don't know if this would apply to CapZ, but I've seen it in the past in Kappa and some other places where one of the challenges with bringing that layer of abstraction in the middle is if there are any imperative API calls that you need for certain operations during certain flows or state transitions of resources, you kind of lose those, or you depend on the abstraction to provide some way to handle those. I don't know if you have any, you may not, but it's something that you lose.
Do we have any for private cluster flows, Cecile, like Bastion? Or is that all? Basically, are we ever creating a set of resources that need to sort of follow along a serialized state flow before? That might be difficult to do with something like ASO.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you talking about dependencies between resources?
Well, I'm trying to think of a concrete example of what Dane's describing, where we might not simply be able to delegate, like, go create this VM and go create this load balancer, go create this Bastion host in a purely asynchronous way to a different, like a sort of like downstream abstraction, because we actually need the Bastion to come first, and then we need to get information from the Bastion. And I mean, I suppose we could just do that in our controllers before we formulate the serialization is probably not the thing you're describing, Dan, now that I think about it, because we could probably formulate that. We could impose that serialization before we actually delegate out to ASO.
Right. What I'm referring to, and like I said, I don't know if you have any use cases for this in CapZ, but if you have, if the Azure APIs have any imperative operations that we take advantage of, we poke something to, I don't know, mark something unhealthy. I don't know. You don't own that resource, so you get in a weird state.
Cecilia, raising your hand.
Yeah, I think those are all great concerns and definitely something we want to, be figuring out before we jump in and write code. Like this is just, again, early stage, like idea of like, something to worth investigating before we jump into all the work of like V2 migration, especially for AKS. But yeah, again, like there are some details to figure out. I think authentication is also another one, handling credentials, multi-tenancy, all of that. And yeah, and then one thing I wanted to say, just in case that is like reassurance for the point about, the coordination of like releases and things like that. I think one difference with ASO as opposed to Crossplane, I guess, is that the maintainers of CapZ who work at, like some of the maintainers of CapZ, including myself who work at Microsoft, are actually in the same organization as the maintainers of ASO. So we do have a direct line of communication with them that we can use when needed. And they have taken the CapZ case into account from the very early stages, actually. That was one of the ideas. We kind of didn't really follow along with that, but David Justice, who is a maintainer of CapZ, and he's not here, I think, but he was one of the people who helped actually make ASO v2 with auto-generated types. So there's some existing lines of communications there, just in case that matters.
Brian.
Yeah, no, just what was just mentioned, the ASO team has been great to work with. We've worked with them for many feature requests in V1, and we're looking forward to moving over to V2, and I'm 100% for investigating it. Just generally calling out, like, is there that capacity? And if there is, then I think it could be a great way to move forward. So that's all.
Okay, great combo. Thanks, Mike, for instigating that one. All right, looks like we're at the end of the agenda item for now, which means we can do some milestone review real quick if folks are up for it. Cecile is nodding her head very conspicuously, so she is excited about milestone review. All right, so the easiest way to do that is actually to click on this. So one thing to call out is, I think last week we created this milestone, or maybe 2 weeks ago, probably because of the break. And I'm pretty sure I did this and I accidentally set the date to December. So that's not right. So minor releases are bi-monthly. So sometime earlier this week, I set this to January 10th. So the new placeholder date is January 10th. So after the new year, I think we should all expect, probably even now, things are going to start to slow down. So all this stuff may not happen, but let's go. Should we go through the existing work items first and allow folks to call out any interesting stuff, and then maybe we can go quickly through the PR queue and see if there are any untagged issues that should be tagged for milestone. All right, so I'm just going to go in order from top to bottom. Matt, anything you want to call out about the VMSS Flex effort? I know it's a large one.
There's a bug I just found this morning that I'm fixing that I think is the last one, but probably not. But we're almost there.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like January 10th is still feasible.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Cecile.
Just to clarify, it's still marked as work in progress. Matt, are you hoping for people to review it? What's the status there?
Well, I'd like to fix this bug and then it's ready for review.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Going down the list. So I don't know what this one is. It feels like it's vaguely ringing a bell, but let me open this one up. Is Francesco here? Cecile, you have some context.
Yeah, I think I know about this one. I think this one is assigned to Matt, waiting for review since it's touching the machine pool that the other one we just talked about also modifies. But it's fixing a bug, so it'd be great to get that in.
Okay, cool.
It's ready. It's just waiting for review.
I will look at it
if
now.
anyone else also is able to review it.
Cool. All right, great. Okay, Ashutosh, Ashutosh, are you here? I didn't see you earlier. No, I don't think so. But I have seen just peripherally steady progress on this, so I assume this is fine. Matt, do you have any thoughts on the 2204 PR?
I mean, we could merge it now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, let's just merge it now.
Oh, you mean it's like already, it was just held?
It was held, but it wasn't held based on new versions being published. We don't actually need to do that, so we can just go ahead and merge it now.
I was the one who held it, so I should have an answer for that. Cool. Oh yes, this was back when I thought that gesture worked.
Just one quick question about the cherry pick. Why are we like? Why does this one qualify for cherry pick? It doesn't seem like a bug fix.
So that is
It's not really a bug fix. I don't know.
Fair question. Do we have? Why don't I'll take this up, and can you cancel a cherry pick? Mike, go ahead.
You don't have to merge it.
I would also just use caution with 2204 and C groups V2 with some of the older versions of Kubernetes. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay, so Mike, what you're saying is that 2204 delivers a Linux kernel of cgroups v2 as a requirement, which has funky side effects pre 125 or 126.
Pre 120, so pre 124, which I know is only sticking around for a couple more months. So 123, you would need to run cAdvisor as a daemon set in order to get the right set of metrics. So there is some funkiness with 123 still in C groups v2, which is enabled by default in 2204.
Okay.
Should we not try to use 2204 then? I mean, this is just a policy change. We're publishing it for all flavors. So if that's safer, maybe we should just change this PR before we.
I'm going to assign this one to you, Mike, because this sounds like you've been through the wars. I saw your talk at KubeCon.
Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to take a look at that and comment on there.
What I'm hearing is that we should wait for end of life on 123 before doing this. If you could add a comment to that effect, that'd be wonderful. Cecile? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't know that we can. I think with AKS, don't we need to go to 2204?
Well, this is only for self-managed. This is not for managed. So,
right.
So for AKS is, we have to just rely on that AKS is doing all the right things that it's doing.
Okay.
Again, I watched your talk at KubeCon, so I know that there's a way forward, but I know that way forward is the cost benefit is dicey, which is, I think, precisely the theme of your talk. Like, be careful before you do this, it's not really worth it. So it seems to me that we should not do 2204. Well, for the CAPC perspective, because we don't have like mature configuration for C groups, as far as I know, in the OS image surface area for these reference images, delivering a 2204 that had a particular daemon set to configure C groups exactly how we want would be a lot of net new work that I'm not sure we want to sign up for, and it would be better to just wait for end of life.
So I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm just making sure that we don't make 2204 any sort of default or anything like that. If we publish an image and it's just available for somebody to choose, then that's fine. I just wouldn't want to make it the default image for anything that's less than, the supported versions.
Cecile?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, since this PR is only enabling it per version already anyways, maybe we could be a little more more conservative with how aggressively we enable 2204 and only enable it for the newer Kubernetes version that we know are good.
Oh, is that right? That's actually really easy. Is that correct, Matt? So we literally are just, we have a
that would be an
dictionary
easy change. If we want to say we're just not doing it, we just remove, line 193, line 94. If we think it's only safe for like 124 and 125. So anyway, go ahead and just make a comment to that effect if you would, Mike, and I can redo this PR. There's certainly no rush. Just trying to get out ahead of what we usually do, which is let the Ubuntu version rust.
Sounds good.
Okay. Milestone review, super valuable. I think I lost my tab. Come on, you can do it. Okay, moving right along. Is Michael here for refresh custom data automatically? I'm not super familiar with this. I know it's been in the queue for a little bit. Anybody have any authoritative information?
Still a draft, isn't it? I looked at it at one point and then I saw it was a draft. So
you're right. You're right.
Stop paying attention.
Should we remove it from the milestone in this case and then re-add it if it's?
I'll just ask. Okay, cool. All right, this is my PR. It's annoying to see that there's a failing test there. This is basically ready for review. So this will definitely land before 1.7. This looks like a bug. So is anyone working on this PR to fix this bug? Okay, so I have a conversation open. So essentially, is it assigned to me? It's assigned to me. Yep, I remembered this now that I look at the actual. So I don't have anything interesting. I'll keep trying to get in contact with the submitter, and then at some point we'll kick it out of the release milestone if it doesn't look like it's moving forward. Mike, this is the one you spoke to. It seems like this is nearing completion, so keep it in the milestone, I would imagine.
Yeah, the only thing that could affect it in the milestone is there's a question I have in there about how we determine the current AKS version in one of the EDV tests. It's towards the bottom. Oops, that was probably it right there. That part right there, I, for the moment, kept it at the 2020 container service version. But if somebody could just answer that question, I'm not sure how much effort that'll be for me to fix it if it needs to change. That would be the only thing that could potentially impact it timing wise. But other than that, everything is rocking and rolling, ready to go.
Cool. It would surprise me if we need to retain the old version. John, do you have any context that would maybe explain why?
Oh, the reason why I retained it is because the functions being called no longer exist.
Right.
There is no such thing as a container or as a list orchestrators anymore.
That was some fast entropy because I think these are new tests. Go ahead, Cecile.
Yeah, I don't have any like direct information on this specifically, but just looking at the function, the list orchestrators sounds pretty legacy to me. I think that came directly from like Azure Container Service when we had more than just Kubernetes. So I wouldn't be surprised if they renamed it to something else. And I think the one you're pointing to, agent pool available version, sounds about right. So I can check after the meeting and give you a thumbs up, but I'm pretty sure that's the right find.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at this, I realize this is actually code we've had for a long time. Is that right? Is this, Matt, were you involved in this a couple of years ago?
Yeah, this rings a bell. Back when we used to have DCOS and Swarm and stuff as orchestrators.
Yeah, so let's definitely make some effort to get rid of this legacy code. So this is great that you're doing this, Mike. I don't think this is a ton of effort, so I think this is definitely viable for this milestone. And all else being equal, let's prioritize getting this actual change in this milestone. So if we need to make some compromises here because this is super gnarly, I think we can probably figure something out.
Okay, thanks for the input.
Yep, thanks for the PR. Okay, I feel like I've been working with, I can't repro this, so I expect this will close soon. So for folks using Windows with external cloud provider, it does work. We're just looking for maybe there are particular reasons, particular scenarios in which it's not working for Michael. Okay, this one's been around for a while. Is there any recent updates? Dane.
Yeah, I took this over from Brian a little while back, and I can speak to its current status. So let's see. I had a quick huddle with Cecile and someone else about the status of it, what it needs. It needed some tests and some extra doc, like API comments in the built-in generated API docs, basically. The tests, one of the things we were going to do was make some of the older fields that are being deprecated, like the spec level, subnet name, and accelerated networking, which actually are now per interface settings, to make the defaulting webhook effectively migrate those values to the new fields. And so it's basically all done. I just haven't pushed the change up. The one thing that I'm working on is tests for that. I had to poke holes in the immutability for the Azure Machine template to make that happen. And I'm just trying to write some good tests around that. That's the last piece really. And then I can push up what I have. So I wanted to do it yesterday, but then I got pulled into something else. So, but I've actually been actively working on it, even on the side during this call. So it should be pushed up today.
Okay, cool. Well, this seems like a not inconsiderable amount of work. So thank you so much for sticking with this. Oh,
Yeah.
Cecile. Brain dumping a bunch of notes in chat. Cool. Awesome. That'll be great to land that. Okay. Do we remember this one? Again, anyone feel free to raise hand. Oh, Cecile, you added these to the milestone recently, so maybe you have some context, or maybe you just blindly did that.
I think I did that just so we'd pay more attention to it. Just because it's
Cool.
one of the old ones that's, you know, dragging on. And I think Willie did some reviewing on it. And I added a few comments as well. So now we're waiting for the author to get back to us, but it'd be great to see this one cross the finish line as well.
Yep. Cool. Achievement unlocked. We noticed it. We talked about it. All right. So next one is, does this ring a bell? Let's see here. Oh, yes. This will be really interesting, actually. I feel like I will take, am I assigned to this? I'd like to take a crack at this. So my interest in this has to do with running legacy autoscaler using Cluster API. So I think there are some customers who may benefit from that, not using the Cluster API autoscaler, but rather using the Azure autoscaler, which would call the underlying BMSS directly. So this might unlock those scenarios. You know, it's a little weird because like the AKS scenario, CAPI then kind of defers the authority for like replica count, but I think that there are some interesting scenarios there. So I'll look into that. So I'll keep that in the milestone. Let's see, this one I'm super appreciative, but it's I see the failed test. Go ahead, Dane.
Just real quick regarding the last one, for what it's worth, we did a real small change in our local fork in our build of CapZ to do exactly what this is talking about. And we are operating that way currently. It's been working well. Yeah. The only issue I think we ran into is just a result of the fact that we're behind a couple of releases. So once we get up to the newer, we'll have a few of the other bug fixes.
Cool. You don't have to, but I'm just going to go ahead and assign you as a reviewer if you have.
Okay.
You are. So you've been using that. It's been working. That sort of delegated authority works okay.
Yeah, it's been working fine. The one thing we made it do is we also are having CapZ patch spec replicas, machine pool resource, just to keep them in sync. I mean, it lags a little bit, but
I think that's in here as well.
It's probably almost identical to the code that we did. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk about how to prevent you from going to forks in the future at some point. Let's make you even happier where you just can't help but be on head. Okay. So the 1.3.0 update, I'm not sure that let's see, that FERCOT has been getting the greatest support from us. Looks like Cecile, have you been leaning in here? I just feel bad.
No, Matt was helping actually.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
but
Thank you,
only
Matt.
with a couple of things. There's still some stuff that's failing, and I guess 1.3.0 is out now, so we should probably. So I'll try and help some more today because he's been working hard on this.
Might be good to do a pairing live session on this if she's available.
Okay, I feel Matt's not going to come to the next several ops hours because he's picked up like 6 tasks today. All right, Azure SDK 67, we talked about this. I think it makes sense to keep this in the milestone for now, unless someone has some dissenting opinion based on prior discussion. And Cecile talked about Dependabot. This seems like a, I assume this is tractable to be finished in the next few weeks?
Depends on the author.
Cool. Well,
But if they don't have.
we
that-
don't have information to suggest we want to kick it out of the milestone yet, right?
No.
Okay, and this, I think didn't this close yesterday?
I know that's a follow-up, that's mine.
Okay, cool.
That's for the cloud provider values.
Cool. Okay, a ton of information in the last 15 minutes. Do you want to do a quick PR audit? It looks like maybe Cecile, you already did that before the meeting. I see you tagging a bunch of those. So are we good for that? Do you think?
I think it's still worth going, and especially if anyone in here has anything they're working on they don't see in here, it might be good to call out.
All right, cool.
Yeah, this is just like the old PRs that I looked at, just the second page.
Okay, so I'm actually just going to leave this open for a bit. I mean, if I see anything obvious, do we get milestone metadata in this view or do we not? Oh yes, it's this tiny thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of subtle.
So if you don't see this little flag post, then Willie.
Yeah, so the make resource ID required, that should probably be added to the milestone.
Cool. Thank you.
It's, yeah, I got some, I just saw Cecile reviewed it, so I'll respond to that, but it's not too big, so it should make it.
All right, cool. Let's see. This week's been so crazy that I literally don't remember what this is. Right. This is something I would like to change. So to get in, so I'm going to aspirationally target it with the mouse. It's slightly complicated. So this is going to be augmenting our existing external cloud provider test to include a Windows pool. Should be fine. If we discover problems, then we probably don't want to break that test, but that should be in the milestone, I think, for now at least. All right, Nawaz.
The PR 2829 could also be added
Yep.
to.
Okay,
Oh.
great. Cooking with gas here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think I saw, is it Akinlolu? Am I saying your name right? I think I saw you in the meeting. Do you have anything that you can add about the likelihood of this landing?
Yeah, that one has a issue that I noticed, and someone helped me in the Slack group. Thank you for that. And it was an unexpected code change going in, so I asked in the chat about how to get help figuring out if there are any test files to change or anything like that. The testing templates were updated as well, so I'm not sure if that covers any testing requirements there.
Okay, cool. Well, I've got probably too much information in my brain to quickly absorb all that. But do we feel confident that we want to lean into this in the next few weeks and try to land it before 1.7?
Yeah, I believe so. And if it's okay, if this is the right time to look at the code change I'm talking about to see if anyone has any suggestion on testing that. So line 99 right there, the issue that came up is the machine pool reconciler. was using the metadata name before. And so if the spec.name is different,
This is the name of the cluster. Is this the name of the cluster or is this the name of the pool?
the name of the pool.
Sorry,
Yeah.
the name of the pool, yeah.
And so it would say, so if your pool metadata name in the cluster is named like cluster 1 dash pool 0, it'll look for that pool instead of pool 0 if that was your spec.name. So that was causing a not found error.
Okay, cool. Cecilia, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, just a question. Does anyone have context on why there's a resource name in the spec and we're not just using metadata name for the name of the agent pool? That seems odd.
Dane?
I haven't used AKS in a while, but I'm going to speculate because we did spike a while back. I believe it has very stringent name length restrictions.
John? I saw you nodding your head.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that I think that's because of the naming restrictions where, yeah, they have to be very short and not very many characters.
Dane?
I'm sure there's reasons that it's like that, but that's that was a big inconvenience I remember when we were trying to come up with naming schemes for those things. So if there's any way in the future they can relax the very short limit, I'm sure the users would be very glad to have that.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I just don't, this is confusing to me. I need to do a deep dive. So let's just table this. I'll tag it for the milestone. It sounds like this is literally fixing a bug for you, Akinlolu. So let's prioritize getting that addressed. Okay, great. All right, so this is tagged for the milestone. This, I'll tag this real quick, if you don't mind, John. This is basically ready, I think. And MEC. Again, my brain, I don't think I know what MEC means. Is anyone familiar with this? Okay, Ashutosh looks like he's been helpful to review, but this looks like a fairly large. To see how.
I added some comments on that one. It was missing some documentation and it was unclear whether like users could actually use this or not. I think they're adding something that's in private or public preview. So we're trying to clarify that. I don't think it's worth adding to the milestone for now.
Okay, cool. It looks like a cool thing, but not trivial. Okay, so we added this one to the milestone earlier. Let's see, this is not in the milestone, but I don't think this is huge. I think let's add this to the milestone as I'm reading through it. If anyone disagrees. We've still got a month, so we're still in the time where we should throw the kitchen sink at it before we can start removing stuff. Okay, milestone, 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 milestone. This is a work in progress. So I'm going to skip over it. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to interrupt. Let's see. Does anyone know about this one? Cecile May?
Yeah, I just commented on that one earlier. I think we can close it. I thought I closed it. Maybe my close comment didn't work. Oh yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay. Great little endorphin release there. Let's see. Matt, do you have any thoughts on this?
It basically worked except for a couple specific configurations, and I haven't gotten back to it to tease those out. So I think it can still go forward, but
do we want to prioritize it in the next few weeks, or do you want to just kind of have it in the background?
yeah, let's put it on the milestone. It shouldn't take a lot more work to make it pass in general, and it could save us a reasonable amount of money.
Got it. Cool. Okay. Is this related to Ashtosh's workload identity, or is this a different work stream? CCL.
I believe it's different but related. I think this is more related to the SDK migration. It's but Ashutosh was involved in reviewing, I believe.
Okay, I'll just actually ping him. Go ahead, Dane.
I was just going to say, I don't know, but I wonder if this is related to the workload identity work.
Yeah, I think it may be. Okay, may as well ping the author as well. That would be weird if I didn't do that. Or for F for cool. And if you're here, Raphael, thank you. All right, I can add this to the milestone. I have a little bit of work to do, but it's all up there in the brain somewhere. Let's see. Not so bad for a 2-page PRQ. Yeah, actually, I don't know about this one. I'm going to punt on that. This one has been around for a while. Does anyone know about? We're at time, so feel free to drop it. I think my AirPods just ran out. Could folks hear me? Did my
Yeah.
AirPods were like completely synchronized with this Zoom slot? Okay, there are two more. This one I will add to the milestone. Definitely want this to be, and it'll be a more focused group on this starting next week. Okay, Matt, do you have any thoughts on this one? I think this is the last one.
I don't know. It's not urgent, but it'd be nice to have in there. I don't think I'm not sure why it's got to fail on it, but we should. I'll revisit it. I think we can put it on the milestone because.
Okay, let's put it on the milestone. At least
we're going to do it or not. Yeah.
We'll notice it next time.
The hitch is how not to slow down unit tests for most of us who don't want the race detector to run because it'll make it take like 10 minutes instead of 3.
Right. Okay, we are 2 minutes over. Thank you so much, everybody, for your stamina and participation. This was very lively. See folks next week.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.